Hey guys, welcome back to Woods Tree Farm. I'm Phil, and today I'm going to give you an overview of how our flower season went. As quickly as it arrived, it is now over. There's still lots of flowers in this field, but we're going to call the season over primarily because all of our sunflowers are done. And I'll talk more about that in a couple minutes. I wanted to give you a little overview of what we have in the flower patch, and I'll talk more about what we think worked well this year and what maybe didn't work so good. In our flower patch, we really only have three kinds of flowers for picking. We have zinnias, we have cosmos, and we have sunflowers. There are multiple varieties of each, and I wanted to share with you some of the ones that I think did really well for us, and some of the ones that were, maybe we're not going to do this again. First up right here, we have, these are the Oklahoma Gold, I believe they were called, from Johnny Seeds. These were the first ones to bloom. They started blooming in like 35 days, and they have bloomed continuously without issue throughout our entire season. So these have already been in bloom like a month and a half, and I'm sure if we kept deadheading them, they would just keep coming back. Though you can kind of tell the plants are starting to get some age on them. And especially down low, we're getting a lot of brown flowers where, you know, fungal issues and some mildew has gotten to the plants. And that's kind of transitions right into one of the things I'm going to talk more about, but our plants are too close together, and I'll give you a close look as to why here in a minute. The giant Dahlia Scarlet zinnias did really well for us too. These are those, many of those flowers are well beyond their useful life, but these have produced really well, and the plants have grown very prolifically. We've been really satisfied with how they've done. The double-click bicolor violet cosmos are now our favorite cosmos. They are very, very pretty to look at. They took a lot longer to bloom than any of the other cosmos, but everybody just really likes those. So we're going to do more of those next year. The single color red cosmos that I have in these next couple rows here, really not satisfied with those at all. And I don't think we're going to do those again. They seem to have a really short bloom life, and in the vase they just really don't last at all. They're pretty out here in the field, but you know, they're just not nearly as nice as even the mixed. You know, we've got these gold ones here, or rather these orange ones here. I've got some gold ones over there. They do really well, and I've got some mixed color cosmos as well. They all do really well, but the bicolor violet, everybody has just been cutting those like crazy as soon as they started to bloom. So we're definitely going to do more of those next year. The mixed colored zinnias that we got, this is actually our third year planting those. They continue to do really well for us. We did notice that people were definitely cutting the bright pinks and the purples more than everything else in these rows. So next year we're going to look at getting some dedicated rows for bright pink and purple. Massive horsefly flying around. Quit. Right, so next year we're definitely going to have some dedicated rows for some pink and purple zinnias. We're going to have more rows of the Oklahoma zinnias. Now the Oklahomas do have a smaller bloom than some of the others, but it's really nice in a bouquet with different size flowers. Here's another row of those gold ones looking good. Now along the back of this plot we had a couple different types of sunflowers, and on the very back row we did these mammoths, and I did that primarily as a screen. We've got a neighboring property over here, there's a house over here, so we kind of just did that as a screen so people couldn't see the house and the folks at the house couldn't see down in the patch, and I think that worked out really well. I wasn't really expecting people to cut some mammoths, but they did. But some of those are huge, and the birds are absolutely loving them now that they've gone to seed. In front of the mammoths we had some pro cuts. There's not a lot of those flower heads left. Many of those got cut, and there's a couple of them over here. These are pro cut lemons, or what's left of them. Just a couple of those left, and then pretty much all the pro cut oranges ended up getting cut out of here, so they all did really well. So here's something that did not work out well, and this is more just unique to our property, but I'm sure everybody has a little bit of this. This section here is completely different soil, and the flowers just did not come up as well over here. We also had some really heavy rains early on, and shortly after these plants sprouted, a couple of these roses really got washed out pretty good. You can kind of see some of the ruts in here. So this is part of the reason why we're shutting down for the year already. These were planted on a succession plan that would have had us going into middle of September, but you know, there's aren't that many of those blooms left. And then I actually had more planned for over here, and we had some of the same issue where the flowers just weren't coming up well, and a couple of our rows got washed out. So here we are now after 4 weeks of picking, and we hardly have any nice looking sunflowers. I think right here I had 6 rows of black oil sunflowers. I've already mowed those down. They were some of the first ones to bloom, some of the first ones to come and go. And I just mowed them down so we didn't look at the ugly brown stalks there. And right next to those, this is where I planted my saved Pro Cut seed from last year. But you can tell, because of the soil conditions and because of the washout that we had, there aren't that many coming up. But I did an experiment last year, and I posted a video last year, and several of you have since asked me, hey, how do those Pro Cut seeds come back? Because last year, I didn't even know if we could save that seed. In fact, some people had told me, oh, that seed's sterile, it's not going to produce flowers or whatever. Well, take a look at this. So even though these plants are short, they are absolutely making flowers. Okay, so there we go, there's that, there's that. There's another one of those. Now what we're seeing in here is a whole lot of branching that the original Pro Cuts didn't have much of. So that might be an output of the saved seed, I don't know. But all throughout here, the few surviving plants, everything has a head. Now, we may not get a genetic clone to the original Pro Cut that we saved. It may have been cross-pollinated with something else, and I think that's what, you know, I'll have to do another follow-up still to show you these when they're open, and that'll be next week, because you can see how they look right now, and we'll end up seeing what they look like. Hopefully they look pretty good. But those, you know, couple flowers right there, 20, 30 flowers, that's all I would have open for sunflowers for next week if I decided to open. And I just don't want people showing up expecting sunflowers for sure and only see 20 or 30 flowers. That's just not a good experience. So if you saw our planting video back in the beginning of the season, I showed that we use this ground cover for the first time, this black plastic mat that's a woven plastic that's on the ground. I showed how we set that up. We melted holes, and what I can say now, what I've learned, is for the types of flowers that we're doing, for primarily for zinnias and cosmos, the 8-inch grid that we set up for this is way too close together. So we'll roll this stuff up at the end of the season. We'll use it again. We're going to buy more for next year and do more rows with ground cover, because this saved us so much work for maintenance compared to previous years. Previous years we spent a lot of time weeding. This year didn't really spend much time at all. So the other rows that are in our patch that don't have ground cover, we kind of selectively walked through those, tried to pick weeds when they were young, and then just before we opened, we went up and down all of the rows, all of the aisleways, and sprayed all of the aisleways with herbicide. So any of the large weeds were just, you know, they'd burn off and get smashed down as people started walking, and that works out really well. So we're going to expand upon the ground cover because I think it's going to work really well. We're definitely going to change the grid because these are too close together. When it was really wet, we got a lot of rain kind of early in the season. Recent weeks here have been drier, but you could tell the plants were really struggling to breathe. There were some mildew issues that kind of cured themselves as things dried out. We didn't spray any fungicides or anything on these plants, and they all did pretty well. So that is the lesson learned with the ground cover, is just from a time-saving standpoint. If you want to do more, you know, being able to get back some of your time on the maintenance, on the weeding, and on the cleaning, ground cover really helps with that. It was super tedious to set up, but I think in the long run, over the course of the summer, so worth it. On the topic of ground cover, we did use a 4-foot wide ground cover, and then when we laid it down, we weren't super precise about it, but we left at least a foot, and in some cases about 18 inches in between the ground covers. So that meant between the ground cover that doesn't have plants and the uncovered area there, and then the next ground cover that doesn't have plants, we were expecting to have at least like a 3-foot aisleway. But these plants kind of grew out so much, and actually kind of varies based on the plant. But you get over here in these scarlets, for example, or you look at where the cosmos are, they've completely closed off our rows. And there were some areas I had to constantly kind of maintain, and I would actually come through with a long shearing knife, the same long knife that I use on Christmas trees, and I would just hack off branches that were laying out over the row so that people could get through. So next year we're going to definitely space these out a little bit more. I don't know if I'm going to experiment with wider ground cover or not, because obviously if we use the same ground cover width and we just space it out, that's going to be more aisleway area that's going to be susceptible to weed growth. So I'll have to give that some thought, but I'm still really pleased with how it went. It's just a little lesson learned there with the spacing. People don't really like to go up and down the aisles with plants brushing up on their legs. They think they might have bugs crawling on them or something, I guess. But we found that people really use the aisleways that were most open, and you could tell at the end of a picking weekend where all the flowers were missing. They were missing from the rows where the aisles were most open, and there were plenty of blooms on the aisles where the rows were a little bit tighter. So something to think about as we're laying things out. But for next year, we're definitely going to space things out more. We're definitely going to do more with zinnias, and we're going to look at getting some more, I keep calling them exotic varieties of zinnias, but there's, some of the queen mixes, and there's some multicolor blooms, and there's all these different size blooms that we could experiment with. So I think zinnias are so easy to grow. They're so versatile. They have a long base life, and people really like them. And obviously they grow well here, which is kind of the whole other thing. We're probably going to do at least like 50% more zinnias for next year. Like I said, expanding on the different varieties. We're going to get more of those Oklahoma varieties with the smaller blooms. We're going to get some of the really small jazzy type ones. We actually had some jazzies in here this year. We kind of accidentally mixed it up with another seed, and we just thought, oh, well, we'll make a little blend here in this row. But what happened was I didn't realize the jazzy zinnias were such smaller plants, and they ended up just kind of getting crowded out, and they didn't really bloom well. So we'll have a dedicated spot for some of the shorter varieties with the smaller blooms like the jazzies. We'll have, the Oklahomas in several different colors. We'll have multicolors again. We're going to do some of the queen mix, and there's several other different varieties of zinnias that we're going to try. We're going to do more with those bicolor violets, like I already mentioned, the cosmos, that bicolor violet cosmos. We're going to get more sweating. We're going to get more sunflowers of the Pro-Cut variety, and I'm not sure what else with sunflowers. I think we're going to get some of the branching types, and what else are we going to get? Some of the Mexican sunflowers as well. We've actually never grown those, but I've seen them. They look pretty cool, and it looks like the way that they branch and the way that the Mexican sunflowers kind of bush out, they'll probably create a nice little block of those because they create kind of a dense hedge depending on how you lay them out. So that's a little bit of what we think did well from a planting aspect, but let's talk about how the actual business and how the operation went this year. All right, so I walked over to our hidden field. The flower patch I was just showing you is right through there. We just put that road in last winter so people could come straight downhill from the flower patch into our hidden field, we call it, because you can't really see this field from anywhere else in the property. And this is where we set up games and activities for the whole family to enjoy. So there's swings and a playhouse and checkers and giant Jenga and cornhole. There's a couple shaded seating areas for people to sit down and relax. We got the new tractor tire mountain over there, which was fun to build. Those tires were really heavy, but kids were, climbing all over that, having a great time. And that has kind of become a hallmark of the events that we do out here. And we want to make sure that we're providing a venue for young families to get outside and enjoy themselves and make some memories. And of course, we want young families to come back here for Christmas time. So that's part of the reason why we started doing flowers in the first place, is that we wanted to try to attract some similar people, some people who, who like to cut flowers, may also like to have a real Christmas tree at home at Christmas time. And we thought that would be kind of a good cross-marketing opportunity for us as our farm grows. So anyway, wanted to show you what we got going over here, because we do make more of an event out of our flower patch than just flower picking. We try to bring the whole family out, and we try to give them all something to do while they're here. So now I'm going to walk you through our shaded path here that goes to the other flower patch. It's like a 3 or 4 minute walk. It might be 120, 130 yards from one patch to the other. But it's this was brand new for us. Last year we made everybody walk across our Christmas tree field, and in August and September in Virginia, it's just so hot, so humid. There were a lot of people that just kind of weren't pleased with that long hot walk. So we've got this new road, this new path, and everyone seemed to enjoy it. But this is where I'll show you the crazy patch. So over here I got a couple buckwheat patches going. We're just using these both as a soil amendment but also for photography. So that one over there is in bloom. This one will start blooming in the next week or two, and then just uphill from that I've got another succession started. Up here this will be a little bit more wild. We just seeded the buckwheat into the cut grass, so we'll see how that goes. There is the crazy patch, and here's where I'll stop and talk to you about the other things that I think worked well, and some things we're going to change for next year. So for pricing, I talked about this last year and I didn't really change anything. We charge a $5 admission just to get on the property, and then there is a fee to pick flowers as well. We have 3 different sizes this year, and we did a 20-ounce cup for $12. That's up from 10 is what we did last year. We had a 0.6 gallon bucket that was $26, and then we had a larger 2.5 gallon bucket for $60. Last year we did have a $40 bucket that slotted in between the $26 and the $60 bucket, and we sold quite a few of those. I didn't find any of those this year, so unfortunately we didn't have that as an option, and that may have hurt our bottom line a little bit, just because I think a lot of people that maybe would have gone to the $40 bucket just stayed down to the $26. So next year we're going to look at that again and make sure that we have another option that helps people spend a little bit more if they want to. On the topic of getting people to spend a little bit more, on our 3rd week, we did try something different that I think is a big win, and we're going to continue to do it for every event in the future. We offered a deluxe admission that included a popcorn and a drink, and holy cow. Put a saddle on that thing. Quit it. In our 3rd weekend, when we offered the deluxe admission, we found that about 40% of attendees, or 40% of our admissions on that day, were the deluxe admission. So I think that's pretty awesome, because it's 60% more costly. 40% of those visitors decided right at the gate to go ahead and spend 60% more. That's fantastic. If we did that week in, week out, we would have had several $100s more in admission revenue than we would have had in previous or without it. So anyway, that's a big win. I think next year we're gonna bump the price on that just a little bit, because it was only $3 more, and people just looked at that and was like, yeah, no brainer, I'll go ahead and do that. We've always had a little snack stand where we sold like prepackaged snacks, we sold bottled drinks and whatnot, and you know, we sell a little bit of it here and there. But compared to the upfront sale, I mean, our volume for drinks and popcorn went up like 600% on that first weekend we offered that. So I think just bundling it up right there at the gate just took the optional sale out of the equation. It didn't give people a chance to say no later, which plenty of people did, and you know, just go ahead and bank that revenue. Our total sales this year were significantly higher than last year, though last year we tried to smush Flower Fest into one weekend. So we had we actually had 4 weekends we were open altogether, but the 3 of those 4 weekends were kind of like, yeah, we're here, come pick flowers if you want, and we didn't do the whole Flower Fest and have all the games and activities out and everything, and we didn't charge admission on those weekends. We only charged for flowers. So we had last year 3 just come pick and pay for flower weekends, and we only got, you know, I don't know, a few $100s total across all those weekends. It really wasn't worth it. And then we had the big Flower Fest weekend, which was really good last year. We actually had some news covers last year and just brought a lot of people out in one weekend. This year we actually did about 60% more in revenue, but we did 4 weekends straight, and every weekend was quote-unquote Flower Fest, and we had the full suite of activities. We charged admission for all of those, and like I said, did a lot better this year than we did last year, but it was more work. We also had bigger flower patches, we had more flowers, we had more invested in the whole thing than we did in previous years. So we had high expectations, and actually the event overall did not meet our expectations. Yes, we did 60% more than last year, but we had a much higher growth goal in mind, and we just didn't hit it. So next year we're going to try a little bit harder. We're going to increase the number of flower types. Like I said, we're going to add more to our games and activities. We're going to try to make even a bigger event out of it for families in the future. And we're also going to do more with our advertising and whatnot to try to drive people out here who maybe don't have young children anymore. Because we did learn this year, we did witness that plenty of people that come out are just, you know, maybe maybe their kids are older, or maybe it's just like, you know, an older couple or whatever. So they're coming out here. They're not obviously a young family. They're not that target demographic that we've always had our site set on, but they're still, you know, great customers for us. So we're going to switch up some of our marketing in the future to make sure we're trying to appeal to some of them as well. And, you know, all in all, everyone who came out, no matter what their age, they came out here, they said they had a good time. They really enjoyed it. They love seeing the flowers. They love seeing the butterflies. They love seeing the goldfinches flying around in the sunflower patch trying to find some seeds to eat. And there was just, you know, a lot of fun had by everybody. We didn't hear a single negative comment this year, where last year we did have several negative comments about the distance from the entrance to the flower patch, which was all the way over here. This was the only flower patch last year, and I made a big deal last year about saying, okay, we've got to get a flower patch closer to the entrance. Well, this year we had handicap accessible parking that was right around 100 feet from the flower patch. So plenty of people who wouldn't have been able to enjoy it in previous years were able to enjoy it this year, and for that I'm proud. I'm thankful for the people that came out this year. I'm thankful for the business that we got, because like I said, it was 60% more than last year. And you know, now it's time to switch gears. Time to, you know, fold this up, mow this down, plant our cover crop for the fall and for the winter. And now we think about doing firewood sales, and then we're going to think about doing prepping for Christmas, and then the whole cycle continues as we get through the winter and start looking at spring of next year and planting flowers again. So thank you guys for watching. If you got any questions about how we did things here, how we run our event, what we planted, how we planted, any of that kind of stuff, you know, leave those in the comments, because if you got the question, somebody else watching probably does too. So let's get a good list of questions going down in the comments, and this will be a good resource for people who are looking to do this kind of thing in the future and are learning as they go, just like I am. So thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you on the next video. Bye-bye.